attacked.
In a move that has sent shockwaves through the region, Ukrainian forces have struck an Iranian commercial vessel in the Caspian Sea, an act of aggression that resulted in the death of at least one sailor and left another wounded. This isn't just another skirmish, it is a dangerous expansion of the Ukraine-Russia conflict into a new theater, a desperate gambit by Kyiv to sever the military supply lines between Tehran and Moscow. The Ukrainian Security Service has claimed the vessel was transporting military cargo between Iran and Russia while evading international sanctions, a justification that rings hollow as Iran's foreign ministry condemns the strike as a hostile and criminal act of aggression. This attack, which the Iranian government says violates the UN Charter, represents a fundamental escalation, and Tehran has made it abundantly clear that it reserves the full right to retaliate against what it perceives as a direct act of war. The Iranian Foreign Ministry has already summoned Ukraine's chargé d'affaires in Tehran to convey its fury, describing the assault as a blatant attempt to expand the flames of war beyond Ukraine's borders. This is not merely an isolated incident, it is a symptom of a much larger crisis, a direct consequence of the West's reckless proxy war against Russia that is now spiraling out of control and threatening to ignite the entire Caspian basin. The world is watching as the lines of conflict blur, and the Biden-Trump administration's collective failure to contain this fire is now painfully obvious for all to see. If you find this analysis valuable and want to see more independent, honest journalism that cut its military in the history of the world, it has the logistical capacity and the professional fighting force to mobilize for such an invasion faster and more efficiently than Iran could ever hope to muster. The real reason the Americans will not, and I emphasize will not, launch a ground invasion is not about logistics. It is about the terrifying existential consequences that would follow. The only thing keeping American boots off Iranian soil is the stark reality that such a move would unleash a level of violence that would make the current conflict look like a border dispute. Iran would not hesitate to unleash catastrophic devastation on America's Gulf allies, the very petro-monarchies that prop up the global oil economy. The Strait of Hormuz would be shut down in an instant, choking off the flow of oil from the entire region and sending the global economy into a tailspin of depression-level proportions. This is not a matter of capability. It is a matter of unacceptable risk, a calculus that the Pentagon's war planners, for all their bluster, fundamentally understand. While McGregor focuses on the logistical hurdles, the truth is that the American military machine is currently being bled white in the skies over West Asia. The United States is running dangerously, catastrophically low on its most critical defensive assets, interceptor missiles. General Dan Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, has reportedly warned President Trump in no uncertain terms that the stockpiles of Patriot interceptors and other air defense munitions in the Middle East are dwindling to perilous levels. In a stunning admission of weakness, Trump has been forced to order a temporary suspension of major operations against Iran, halting the relentless bombing campaign that had continued for nearly 2 weeks.
What would happen if Trump today was tempted to say, I'm going to do my own Desert Storm and I'm going to move a bunch of troops over there? Can we do that?
No, first of all, we live in a new world today, and you could never build a lodgment unless you had enormous quantities of air and missile defense that you could surround the so-called lodgment area where you would collect and organize and assemble forces. And at the time, one of the things that we discussed privately was if we ever have to come back again in the future, given the direction of technology, we'd probably have to land at a place like Yenbu on the Red Sea and then cross the desert. Because if we tried to get into the Persian Gulf, we would be sunk or attacked or killed pretty rapidly. A lot of people realized, I think more people realized the danger that would be presented in the future than we appreciate right now.
Shalom, call halal, Yahweh Shemio, Shabbat Shemakakwadash, double honors to the apostles and other bishops of great millstone, even the elders that came before them that taught us the truth. Shalom and salutations to all the brothers out there pushing the word in truth and in sincerity, the hopeful tabernacle of David. I'm the Elder Yahshua, back with the World War III Daily Update. Shalom and salutations to you all. And as you can see, we're in World War III. Iran just struck Ukrainian targets. Why did Iran strike Ukraine? Because Ukraine fired on Ukraine. Ukraine fired on Iran. letting you know we're in World War III. And that's, that's pretty much the lesson. This is officially World War III. This is Revelation 11. Revelation 11:14. Second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. No, we're here. That's not Ukraine's war. Apparently, Ukraine is on the side of Israel and Babylon if they're striking in Rome. And that's what this is. Make no mistake about it.
Admiral Zabrowski certainly understood that, as did the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs, whose name escapes me at the moment. But there were people that were thinking this through. But ultimately, Dan, I think the real lesson is this. Even though there were smart people at the helm, nothing really changed inside the force.
And you talk about if we land in Yanba, which is about right there on the map there, that would be 1,000 kilometers that we would have to travel just to get to the battle space area right there, as opposed to when you and I went in, we went to Al Jabail, which was right here. That would be literally impossible right now with all of the Iranian firepower that they have all up and down this coast. For us to try and disembark with ro-ro ships and container ships to get our tanks and whatever else off the board here, just to drive up to Kuwait, that would be nearly impossible right now. In fact, it might be absolutely impossible. What do you think?
Completely, without question. No doubt about it. And, the tanks are still equipped with these turbine engines. And those things, as you know, drank fuel. And even though you have this auxiliary power unit that's supposed to reduce the amount of fuel that you consume, if you're moving, it doesn't make any difference how fast you move. You consume the gas at roughly, I think it was 8 hours, 7.5 to 8 hours, and you're on empty. I mean, that's 7 or 8 hours of operation. You can't fight a war that way. That's why the notion of committing these forces in a place like Ukraine is absurd. Ukraine is enormous. You'd go a couple of 100 miles and everybody's standing around waiting for tons of fuel to arrive. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't, and in fact, it does. Whether it makes sense or not, we just don't have that capability anymore. So if that happens, the whole system is so much more vulnerable than it was in 1991. It's remarkable how less capable we are today. And I don't think President Trump keeps saying, and Secretary Hicks said 2 days ago, repeated, we're the most powerful military on the planet, and yet we couldn't even do a Desert Storm 2 because of our limited capability. That's the reality of it.
Well, Dan, you got what is it? An echo? You got an echo? Okay.
I don't hear an echo. I don't. If you do, I'm not sure about that.
Is that? I think this. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you fine. I have no problem hearing you.
Yeah, I think we have to understand that it's civilians in general, particularly people who are members of Congress. They're very impressed with glitz and glamour, shock and awe. You show them videotapes of explosions. They equate an explosion on the ground with an effect that is a war-winning effect. There's no understanding of how complex warfare is. And the need for multiple capabilities being employed and orchestrated as an integrated force. There's just no understanding of that at all. So everybody is in the hunt for a silver bullet. Everybody wants to buy the silver bullet that will win the war. And we're finding out that there are no silver bullets unless you want to go the nuclear route. And we should talk about that because I think that's being discussed too.
And let's take a look there, Doug, because you say it's complex. Well, apparently for most in Washington, it's actually not complex at all. It's kind of easy. It's just about a bunch of cash. And here we have a $1.5 trillion defense budget was passed by the House, and that was a little bit deceptive. We're going to talk about what the internal parts of that are here shortly. But just looking at the top line number here, 1.15 trillion. But that's also in addition to 350 billion, of which it was just for somatic, so it didn't look as 1.5 trillion, going from 1 to 1.5 trillion, which is just astronomical. But Congress is really happy with that. And also, turns out that money equals capability. And General Jack Keane says, you know what? Let's just go and use that force and finish the job.
We are on a definite path to return to major combat operations that would involve Israel and the United States. I think that is the path we're on. Is there some negotiations that the Iranians want to do here? Of course, they want to negotiate. Why now? They want to negotiate because they want to stop the United States from imposing their.
They don't want to negotiate. Trump's the one that wants to negotiate because they're getting their butt kicked over there. And Iran keeps saying no, so this is ridiculous. You motherfuckers, boy, are trying anything. Desperate.
By firing on them and taking away their military capabilities. They want to stop that, as they did successfully back on April the 7th and April the 8th. They want to replay that. I don't believe that's going to happen. Pakistanis and Qataris are supporting him on that, but I don't think that's where the president is and his team around him. I believe where they are frustrated, they want to get the Straits of Hormuz eventually open and also return to major combat operations and finish what they started out to do in terms of assigned military objectives.
Just ridiculous.
Have you ever seen...
First of all, they can't because they don't have the ammo. That's why they keep standing down. That's what McGregor's going to laugh and say, well, they keep stopping because they have to reload.
So that's all we got to do, Doug. Just got to go and finish the job here. What say you?
Well, he said some very important things that the audience needs to note. First of all, he led off his discussion with Israel. Dan, now suddenly everything that we talked about in the past, the nuclear development and capability and bringing, Iran to the table, all this kind of nonsense, that's all taking a back seat to control of the Persian Gulf. That's where we are, and that's what we're focused on. And until that resolves itself, we're not going to move on to very much else. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not interested in destroying whatever infrastructure is out there that supports the One Belt, One Road. These are the Chinese rail lines and so forth, the connectivity to Russia, because Iran has a very important role to play in the One Belt, One Road that China has started. But having said that, this is really preeminently, first and foremost, about Israel. And Americans just have to get that through their heads because they ought to be asking why. And, you flashed across this defense bill. And in the new defense authorization bill, there is this integration of Israeli force, let's call it force development or technological development, and American technological development in a purely military context.
Purely military means that they get to come over here to American soil and run military operations, right? And they're paying for it. So this is what everything culminates into. So what is this saying? This is saying that, well, since we got our ass kicked on the fucking battlefield, we're going to come back and kill our own people here at home. Headed up by the IDF. That's all this is saying. You can't read through it.
I think Larry Wilkerson said it best. I think it was early this morning or could have been yesterday afternoon. He said, what we're doing is that we're making what Pollard, the Israeli spy who ratted us out to all sorts of people, legal. But in other words, what he did, for which he was sentenced to life imprisonment, is effectively being legitimated and legalized by this defense authorization bill. Americans ought to be very concerned about that. And I don't think most Americans even appreciate what it means.
Yeah, I'm very sure that a lot of them don't. I mean, that's many are starting to. Thomas Massey, of course, led the charge to try from within to try to get this thing stripped out. He obviously failed because 100%, I believe it was nearly 100% of the Republicans were supportive of that bill in the House of Representatives, and about half of the Democrats were. So there's still an overwhelming number of people who were still subservient to whatever the Israeli side, no matter what they're talking about with the intelligence and the military tying together of the two sides. And I just wonder if you could just on a practical level, just talk about that for a second, because we have had, this claim that, we gain a lot from Israel. we have had other good allies too since World War II. Great Britain, France, Japan, Germany, UK, obviously, and yet we have never even contemplated joining our militaries to them, no matter how good our relationship has been. Why? I mean, this is probably a loaded question, but why do you suppose we're talking about doing that with this tiny little country of Israel when we won't do that to our advantage potentially with any of these other allies?
Well, the other allies had not invested billions of dollars in the campaigns of members of the House and the Senate. In other words, people in the House and the Senate stand to benefit directly and indirectly from these arrangements. It's effectively, on one hand, they're benefiting because they get money from the Zionist billionaires representing the Israeli lobby. And they're also going to be rewarded for supporting the Israeli lobby in the form of kickbacks that are funneled back through their districts and states and so forth. So the financial dimension is unambiguous. It's very real. Again, we're just legislating and legitimating treason for all intents and purposes. We're saying,
And not from Obama. It's just crazy because we're completely bought out. That's where this is going. All right. And I mean, it's no different than what Vlad and them are over there doing. Vlad consolidated everybody over there, starting with China, Iran, Turkey. That's the same Ezekiel 37 argument. So basically, what it says is that it's going to be a world war. Let's do that one more time. Revelation 11 and 14. Second woe is past, and behold, the third woe comes quickly. If you can't see, with Ukraine firing on Iran and opening up a whole new front, tying everything together, that this is the outcome. Right? You're an ostrich. With that, we pray that the elect are edified. Lord willing. And with that, shalom.